Hello, this is Craig Brelsford with RedChip Companies. Thank you for joining today's event with ASP Isotopes, which trades on the Nasdaq under the ticker ASPI. With us today, we have Paul Mann, the CEO of ASP Isotopes. Paul will briefly introduce the company in just a moment, and then we will jump right to your questions. You can submit a question at any time by email at aspi@redchip.com. You may also use the Q&A button and type in your question. I will read it aloud and Paul will answer. Your Q&A button is at the middle of your Zoom window. Before we begin, I'm going to quickly read the safe harbor statement. This call may contain forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. All statements pertaining to future financial and/or operating results, along with other statements about the future expectations, beliefs, goals, plans, or prospects expressed by management constitute forward-looking statements. Any statements that are not historical fact should also be considered forward-looking statements. Of course, forward-looking statements involve risks and uncertainties. I now turn this webinar over to Paul. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, so the format's a bit different this month or this quarter. People have asked us not to go through the presentation and go to Q&A, kind of go straight to Q&A, which is absolutely fine by me. You see the presentation online, so you can find that whenever you want to. I thought I'd give a couple of highlights of what we've achieved this quarter and then hand straight over to Craig for Q&A. So I think, the main highlights for me this quarter is we've put 3 plants into commercial operation in terms of starting to enrich commercial product or starting to enrich product ready for commercial distribution. So the carbon-14 plant started up, I think, in early February. That plant was actually constructed last year. It's been sitting there idle for 9 months, waiting for the feedstock to arrive from Canada. That arrived in late January. And they've started to process that feedstock now, which is fantastic. We still require a second batch of feedstock, which I'm told is coming shortly. And that should produce commercial product around the middle of the year, which is great. The team are great, really happy to be starting to enrich proper carbon-14. The second plant, the silicon-28 plant, started up about 2 weeks ago or so, maybe 3 weeks ago. And we finished construction on that plant in November. We then spent about 3 months or so commissioning it, maybe 4 months commissioning it. Commissioning is always an uncertain process. You never know how long it's going to take. You generally find all the problems during the commissioning phase. The team did a great job. The Silane team did an amazing job. They got through the commissioning phase. Some of the problems they encountered were things like, they couldn't get the liquid helium down to a cold enough temperature, had to work out better insulation, change the cryogenic pump. Is a problem with the OEM supplied equipment, and then they kind of got there. An impeller on the compressors broke, and that was tedious, but we get a new one, mend it, and work through it, kind of thing. Our team of engineers are great at working through these problems, and they solve these problems in real time. So that plant started commercial production a couple of weeks ago. It's now enriching silane, which is fantastic. And the final plant, the ytterbium plant, is our first laser plant, and that started commercial production was about sort of 7 or 8 days ago, and just producing commercial samples right now. That'll go into full commercial production, later on when we've got commercial samples out to customers. So I think the team's done a great job bringing those into commission. We've had some great R&D results as well, looking at isotopes such as xenon, xenon-129, germane, things like that as well. And the team are currently working out how to enrich those, and nitrogen-15. Team are currently working out how to enrich those isotopes. And we have interest from customers and all of that stuff. So, the main highlights of the year so far. And we look forward to building more plants and producing more isotopes. So Craig, I guess I'll stop there and we can start on the Q&A session if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Paul. Yes, there are 3 ways to reach Paul. You can email us your question at aspi@redchip.com. You may also click the Q&A button and type your question into the text box that will appear. In those cases, I will read your question aloud and Paul will answer. You may also use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window if you would like to speak to Paul Mann. I will unmute your line and you can speak to Paul. Let us start with Michael Samuels. You had your hand up. Michael, please go ahead.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking the time. Just a couple questions. What kind of revenue are you looking at generating this year? Number one. Number two, what about how much cash do you have on hand? And do you have enough to last a year, 2 years? Because I think the last time I looked, you had almost 60 million in cash, but I don't know where that is today. So those are the
Yeah,
first.
so
Those are
thanks for that. Yeah, so for revenues, we haven't given guidance for the year, so I can't really tell you what revenues we're going to do this year. But we've told you what contracts we've signed and what the commercial value of each plant or commercial contracts are, and hopefully you can put those together to kind of work out what an annualized revenue would be doing on a annualized run rate once we're hitting our annualized targets, those annualized numbers. So so I'll let
what
you
kind of
do that.
cash burn? What kind of cash burn do you think you'll have this year?
Cash burn. So, we spend sort of 12 to $15 million a year on operating cash burn, and so that basically pays for our 153 employees. It pays for our buildings, our leases. It pays for our energy costs. It pays for our legal fees, our accountants, our auditors, our filing listing fees and Nasdaq fees and all that stuff, all the public company costs. So 12 to 15 million bucks a year is what we spend to keep the company's lights on, essentially.
Okay, and then I'll ask you, I know this is a sore subject with you. Obviously, you had shorters in this stock going crazy. At first they said you didn't even have plants, and you've proved that wrong. I mean, I know there's like I think at the last report, February, there's 16 million shares short. And I'm just wondering, what can you do to combat that? Because obviously that's why your stock's sitting at where it is. So I was just wondering, what do you have to say about that?
I'm not sure it's a sore subject. I mean, I spent 10 years as a hedge fund manager and regularly shorted stocks. It takes two to make a market, buy and sell on the side of every trade. So listen, people can place their bets as they want to. My job over the next several years is to prove the shorts wrong and produce commercial revenues and commercial products and drive the company to where we're generating significant P&L, significant profits. That's just the way the markets are. I think if you look at most nuclear stocks right now, Oklo, Silex, Centrus, the short interest is very high in the whole sector in general, and that's the nature of, pre-revenue or early stage growth companies, and that's the way it goes. And if we deliver on our business plan, I think we'll prove the shorts wrong.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that question. Paul, please give an update on the class action that followed that short report.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm actually allowed to. I don't have an update actually. It's the lawyers are dealing with that, and my assumption is it gets thrown out of court. But I mean, we'll have to wait and see.
Are you going to delay the spin-off plans in this uncertain market environment?
Probably not. No, I mean, you say uncertain market environment. I mean, there's been some recent volatility, but I mean, we're all grown adults who've been doing this a number of years. We've been through these cycles many times before. Markets will settle down at some point in the near future, I suspect, and I think probably the US will be a stronger place as a result of it. So no, I mean, our plan is to spin off QLE as and when we're ready, when the market's ready. And I think I've said historically we need two things in place before we can spin off QLE. The first is we need a location where we're going to enrich uranium. We have that now. We're going to do it at Pelindaba in South Africa, which is basically a plug and play location to build such a plant. And we need to have line of sight to ASPI being cash flow positive. And again, we've started up the 3 plants now, and so I think we're kind of seeing that. So what do we need to do to spin off QLE? We need to file some registration statements with the SEC and Nasdaq and that kind of stuff, and then we're kind of ready to go. So I'd hopefully we'll do it as soon as possible. But I mean, yeah, I can't probably say much more than that because I don't know how long the SEC documents take and Nasdaq documents take. They're out of my control. But the goal is to do it sooner rather than later.
Ian Lee, please go ahead. Ian Lee.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for your time. I'm a little confused as to why you don't give earning guidance. You say it's very simple. The operating plants, the markets. One of the factors for attracting, new investors and institutional investors will be that kind of statement from yourselves on revenue guidance or revenue range. It would make quite a big difference to the profile of a company. I'm just really confused why you don't do it if you say it's so simple.
Well, so I don't know what month we'll start selling commercial products in. And so the difference between, say, May, June, July, and August makes a huge difference to our annual numbers. And so it's difficult for me to predict that right now. The plants are all starting up, they're starting to enrich and stuff, and it's great. But exactly when the first deliveries take place, I only have 2 contracts right now for silicon 28. We're negotiating 3 more for silicon. We're negotiating 1 for germane as well, and there's more contracts we may sign. And so, why not talk about what we think the annualized run rate will be once all the plants are up and running and once we've signed contracts and stuff, and we'll see where we come out at the end of the year.
Make some assumptions and state them. No one's going to. It just gives more granularity, more insights into the company, and goes to sort of debunk some of the myths out there. State the assumptions. Everyone realizes that there's a lot of uncertainty. Things are changing. There's no reason. That's pretty much a standard with every company, really. So I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think small companies, when they're in early stages, it's generally best to kind of err on the side of caution and kind of see what happens. And we'll deliver this year what revenues we deliver as much as possible, and then hopefully next year we'll have a fantastic year, and we'll exit this year at a huge run rate. I think, but listen, let's see how the year plays out. Maybe we can give guidance later on in the year.
Thanks a lot, Ian, for that question. Paul, why does Iceland keep getting delayed? It seems you are almost 4 to 5 months behind schedule.
Yeah, so our first plant in Iceland was going to be zinc 68, and that was when we were assuming Quantum Enrichment plant would be built in 2025, mid 2025. But actually, our first QE plant arrived 12 months early in the summer of 2024, and the results looked so good from the QE process. We kind of felt actually QE is a better way of doing zinc than ASP in Iceland. So we're kind of rethinking which first plant is going to go into Iceland, and it's probably not going to be zinc 68. And all that'll probably get done in South Africa via Quantum Enrichment, because it's just better economics and less capital, higher return on capital, better IRR on the plant. So it's probably going to be xenon 129 or germanium or silicon 28. So we're kind of working through that at the moment. I think we're pretty much there with the licensing process in South Africa. In Iceland, the Icelandic government, the South African government have been speaking about the transfer of technology. I think both sides are pretty happy with how it should work out. We've signed our lease for building. We've signed an energy supply agreement. So we're pretty much ready to go. We just need to work out which isotope is going to be the first one to go there. And I think we'll decide that in the next sort of few months or so. And I'd also add that our team have been really busy completing the construction and commissioning the first 3 plants in South Africa. And they probably haven't really had the bandwidth to start the construction of an Icelandic plant. We're already procuring and constructing and fabricating some of the components for it, but in terms of the actual putting together the plant, they've been very busy these last few months.
Jacob Rowe, please go ahead.
Hey, Paul. So one of my questions is, so you said you haven't actually enriched 99.75% per the last call, and you said the stages are pretty much identical. I think that's what Stridham explained. So how many grams when this first batch finishes all the way through and you get through the second stage up to 99.75%? I don't know. You don't know when that occurs, but how many grams of ytterbium are you expecting to come out of that first batch?
Yeah, we haven't given that level of granular detail. What I would say is that in any enrichment process, the first batch takes the longest, the second batch the second shortest, and the final batch is very short. So, for example, in carbon-14, to go from 0.5% to 2% takes about 60 days. And then to go from 2% to sort of 5% takes, call it 15, 20 days. And then from 5% to 30, 40% takes 5 days. And to go from 30% to 85% takes a couple of hours. So it's a very non-linear process in terms of enrichment, and the kilogram SWUs in the early part of the process is huge versus the kilogram SWUs towards the end of the process. So we haven't given that level of detail, Jacob, and we probably won't. It's quite proprietary
Okay.
information in terms of how we process it and what we do.
Okay.
You know.
But do you have a finalized, when you guys send out samples, are you guys going to kind of be like front running those samples a little bit as in terms of production, as in you guys will have inventory of fully 99.75% production? You send out a little bit of that via samples, and then you expect like to immediately be able to send out commercial quantities after they test it?
Yeah, so we'll build up a significant amount of inventory of intermediate enriched products, and the first few grams of 99.75 we will send out as commercial samples, and then we'll start producing more inventory of intermediate products and more finished product.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. All right, that clarifies it a lot. Thank you. And then I guess my understanding is silicon's a little bit quicker. It's a lot less SWU. So we should definitely see that before ytterbium. Do you have an idea of when we will see those be sent out? I mean, obviously you're not giving guidance, so I'm not expecting super details, but are we expecting it this like month, next month, and well before the end of the quarter?
Yeah, I know exactly when it's being sent out, but we haven't given guidance or advised the street, and I can't say on this call when it's going to happen. That's general public information. But yeah, we have a good idea when it's going out. The customer needs it urgently. So,
Jacob, thanks a lot. Jordan Heimowitz, you can speak now, please. Jordan.
I think you're on mute, Jordan.
Sorry. First of all, I'd like to give a ginormous shout out to Jacob, who just asked the question, who wrote an absolutely outstanding report that's on his website that everybody should read. It's phenomenal, and he deserves a lot of credit. So my first question is, do you want to hire Jacob to be your IR person?
Thank you for the advice. We are actually looking to add a couple of full-time employees to ASPI over the next 6-9 months or so, one of which will be a full-time professional investor relations person. We're also looking to hire someone in charge of commercial for electronic isotopes and also commercial for healthcare isotopes, one in the United States and one in the rest of the world. So we're looking to hire 4 full-time employees in the United States, one of which is IR, but who they will be, we'll see. But thank you, Jordan, for that.
You need an office for that, though, which someone will have to visit. My quite serious question on that is, on his website, he's got a phenomenal chart with, and I don't want you to ask to comment on the numbers, but each plant comes online and dollar amounts. Forgetting the timing of it, but does the ARR look reasonable for each of the upcoming 3 or 4 products? Like you've already commented, ytterbium could be 20 million in ARR, and carbon-14 could be 2.5 to 5, and silicon could be 20 to 25. But could nickel be 50 million and xenon be 40 million? Are those reasonable numbers? Sometime in the future, not this year because the plant's not even open?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know how big the xenon market's going to be. Xenon 129 only got approved a couple of years ago in the United States. It's currently fairly small. A customer of ours tells us they may well need 50,000 liters in 3 or 4 years' time. That's a large number. So that's their view on how big that market could be. I don't know how likely that is, but that's their opinion. Nickel, could be very significant. We have customers wanting 7-8 digit numbers worth of nickel every year, so it could be quite significant. And so I mean, listen, I'd say most of the medical isotopes are probably in the tens of millions of dollars opportunity. I think ytterbium could be larger than that, and obviously silicon could be a lot larger than that over time. I mean, if silicon 28 is proven to make faster semiconductors that are smaller, more heat efficient, that could be a very large market opportunity in 5-10 years' time. Absolutely.
Jordan, thank you very much for your question. Paul, how do the recently imposed tariffs impact your business outlook and potentially supply agreements that are under negotiation?
So there's two types of problem in the world. There's my problem and there's someone else's problem, and that's someone else's problem. So we sell all of our isotopes ex-factory gates. They're responsible for shipping it to the final destination. So if there's any tariffs charged on our products, the customer's going to eat those tariffs. I'm guessing, therefore, the end consumer will eat those tariffs. There are some exclusions from the tariffs. Some of those are kind of critical materials. I haven't checked in a lot of detail, but I would guess most of our products fall under that category and therefore would be excluded from the tariffs. But I haven't checked, and it's our customer's job to check that.
Calvin Horry, you are next. Calvin.
Yeah, thanks for Paul for utilizing this format. It's much more efficient than the previous ones. Anyway, just wanted a quick question on where do you stand on signing the definitive agreement with TerraPower?
Well, we haven't given any guidance on that, and there's a period of exclusivity, which gives both parties time to negotiate the definitive agreements. A definitive supply agreement is quite a complex agreement to enter into. You agree on the price and volume in the first half hour or so. Then the next 6 months or longer is taken to determine many other parameters, such as who's going to test the product, who's going to ship the product, what form is it being shipped in, what are the chemical specifications, who's going to test those chemical specifications, what tests are going to get used to test those chemical specifications, and who's going to monitor and zero those machines that test those chemical formulations, who's going to test the isotonic enrichment, what methods are going to be used for that. Where's it going to get stored? How's it going to get shipped? Who's shipping it in? What container? What ports it's going from? Where it's going to? Timings, that kind of stuff. So there's a lots of stuff that goes into a supply agreement that has to be worked out by both parties. And that takes time. So when we signed the term sheet with TerraPower in I think November last year, it envisaged a period of time where we could work all that information out and what's needed. So I think we'll sign the agreement quite quickly because we're running well ahead of schedule, well ahead of schedule actually, several months ahead of schedule. So maybe that happens quite soon. See.
Okay, thank you.
Paul, will QLE, Quantum Leap Energy, be an IPO or a direct listing, as you have made reference to both types of transaction in the past?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to commit to either right now. My personal preference is for a direct listing, but we're in the process of hiring bankers to help us with this process, and they'll advise us and guide us accordingly. But it feels to me like a direct listing is the most straightforward way of doing it. But listen, let's see how market conditions are and how things look at the time.
How will the plants be operated? Are you selling them? How would staff be trained to operate them?
So we have about 153 employees in our company now, of which 20% have got PhDs, about half have got advanced degrees, and the other half have got very good, strong high school education. We've trained the staff. We've trained all the staff we need to operate the 3 plants. We have an operations team for each plant, a plant manager for each plant. Mia, who runs the carbon-14 plant, she was actually a student of Alexandra's, who's our head of R&D at a university, her undergraduate degree of her. And you have a similar person at our Silicon-28 plant, and actually Hendrik runs the ytterbium plant right now. We have a plant manager who manages schedules and that kind of stuff. The team are very, very well trained. They understand what they're doing. In the carbon-14 plant, they've been trained by Nexa, actually, in terms of radiation controls and radiation safety and that kind of stuff. So, these are fairly skilled workers who understand how to control these plants and how to operate them. And they're doing a great job.
If you were running at what you consider to be full capacity, then what would the approximate annual production be?
So can you say that question again, and which plant are you referring to?
The writer didn't specify. Here's what he wrote. He wrote, if you were running at what you consider to be full capacity, then what would approximately be the annual production?
Yeah, so let's go for each plant individually. So for ytterbium 176, our current expectation is that plant could do about 1 kilogram a year. We're still not certain yet. We haven't really run the plant for very long, so we're finding that out at the moment, but that's our current expectation. We have about 2 kilos of demand, and so, we're trying to expand that plant as quick as we can and find ways to produce more. For silicon 28, what we've said is that that plant could do over 50 kilos a year. And when we started building and designing that plant, we thought it would be 10 kilos a year, and we took the liberty to expand that plant while we were building it. We recognized 10 kilos wouldn't be sufficient for the marketplace. And then for carbon 14, we've said that plant can do about $10 million of product a year, running at full capacity. And we have a 2.5 kilos of take or pay demand from that plant. And perhaps we do more from spot sales to the same customer.
ASP Isotopes is currently valued at over $300 million, while trailing 12-month revenue is approximately 4.1 million, which implies a price to sales multiple north of 60 times and EV over revenue of over 70 times. These are valuation levels rarely seen outside of high growth tech or biotech in early stages. Can you walk us through what specific milestones or contracts over the next 6 to 12 months you believe will justify this premium, and how you plan to scale revenue to support it?
Yeah, so I'd say the whole of the nuclear space is trading at a hell of a multiple right now. If you look at, Oklo, Centrus, Silex, valuations are way north of where we are. The whole sector's pretty juiced up right now. So what are we going to do to justify our valuations? So first of all, the revenue you're looking at is backwards looking. It's 2024. We've just started up 3 plants where the revenues aren't included in that 4.1 million. So that will accrue to this year's revenue number, which should be substantially larger than 4.1 million. And then we're going to build additional plants this year, which will further grow revenue in 2026 and 2027. We hope to sign we expect to sign a contract with TerraPower to supply them with HALEU, high-assay low-enriched uranium, in the near future. And actually, we have 2 MOUs with 2 customers who collectively require $37 billion of HALEU between now and 2037. So I think if we sign those contracts and we start delivering revenues from these 3 plants, you'll see that price to revenue and EV to revenue number ratio drop dramatically as over the next couple of years.
Lots of questions about silicon. I'm going to try to bring them together here, Paul. When should we expect samples to be sent out for silicon? When do we expect to see new contracts announced for silicon? And somebody asked, are you expecting definitive supply contracts being signed for silicon 28 this quarter?
So let's answer the first question first. Samples. We won't be sending out samples of silicon 28. They're commercial contracts or nothing. So, or at least to large customers. We may send out some samples to universities and that kind of stuff. But the main big semiconductor companies, they're going straight to commercial sales right now. So that's so answers the question on when we're sending out samples. We're not sending out samples. It's just commercial contracts. In terms of signing more commercial contracts, I'd expect to sign some more in the second quarter. It takes 2 to sign a contract, and we're talking to a number of different parties. But we're talking to enough parties whereby we'd expect to sign at least 1 or 2 contracts more for silicon 28 and depleted germanium 73, so germane 70 and 72, and then definitive supply agreements. It's a challenging one to answer. We've been asked to do one. We'll have to wait and see if that's something we want to do or not. The definitive supply agreement with the customer who wants one comes with some other terms and conditions we may not want to deal with. So maybe stick with shorter term supply agreements, but we'll have to wait and see.
For all the medical isotopes you're intending to produce, do you expect there to be any requirement for your plants to be inspected and approved by the FDA or other regulators?
So currently, we do not expect our plants to require approval by the FDA or other healthcare regulators for medical stable isotopes. So things like zinc 68, ytterbium 176, gadolinium 160, that kind of stuff. That said, we actually finish our products off in a GMP environment in case in the future such requirements are introduced. We'll have to wait and see. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how the FDA and other health regulators are going to kind of regulate this industry. But currently, as of today, we are not required to produce under GMP conditions and being inspected by the FDA. Now, obviously, on our pet lab side of the business, that is highly regulated by the healthcare regulator. In pet labs placed in South Africa, it's called SAFRA. If we had pet labs in the United States, it would be the FDA. In Europe, it would be the EMEA. So clearly, pet labs produces medical or finished drug product, and that is regulated by a healthcare regulator. All the ASP Isotopes is not regulated by a healthcare regulator today.
If you see extreme viability for silicon-28, could you switch the current plant to xenon-129 and do a silicon plant for your first Iceland plant?
Yes, we could. That'd be easy to do. That'd be, actually the current plant for silicon-28, it's actually a multi-isotope plant, so it can do many different types of isotopes. It's a very versatile plant in terms of the chemical compatibility of the components in the plant, the compressors, the balancer plant, the cryogenic distillation columns, the pressure swing absorption columns. It's all it's very flexible in terms of what isotopes can go through that facility. So that plant can likely do silicon-28, germane. It could do xenon-129 as well as other isotopes. So it's pretty versatile. And absolutely, if the demand for silicon-28 grew dramatically to greater than 50 kilograms per year, then the first plant in Iceland could very much be a silicon-28 plant. And one of our customers has told us they don't think our South African plant is sufficient for their 2027 needs. We'll see how these things play out over the next few years, but absolutely, we're looking to build a silicon plant in Iceland at some point.
Would you consider selling Quantum Leap Energy to an SMR company?
We'll do whatever's in shareholders' best interest. And so if an SMR company wanted to make a trade sale and buy it, then absolutely we'd consider it. We'd probably change the license agreement between ASPI and QLE. So currently, there's a license agreement between ASPI and QLE. So QLE pays ASPI 10% of QLE's revenues from uranium and lithium-6. And we'd probably change that contract so it'd be dollars per kilogram produced, because obviously if the SMR company owned QLE and they are internally selling to themselves, it wouldn't be an external revenue. So we'd like to change that contract, and actually we're in the process of doing that right now, actually, in case that ever becomes a reality when we spin the thing out. So absolutely we'd consider that, whatever's in shareholders' best interest.
Why has ASPI transitioned away from Moly 100 as a short-term production goal?
I would say transitioned away from it. It's more, there's easier markets to break into the Moly. We have demand from Moly from a couple of countries. None of them are particularly friendly to the United States right now. And I think we do better off selling silicon-28 and germane and ytterbium into the US market than we are selling Moly into Asian markets, quite frankly. And I think that gives us a better long-term opportunity. When you look at the TAM for silicon-28, it could be really huge. And no other company is able to produce silicon-28 in the form of silane like we are. It's a very unique characteristic of our processing. And so, let's use that to our advantage and let's try and own that market.
When do you plan to begin construction on a nickel-64 plant?
So we've actually already started the procurement for that plant. And so I'd expect to start construction this year. It'll probably be the next laser plant we build. Nickel-64 and zinc-68 will be the next two laser plants we build, followed by gadolinium-160. These plants take about two months to build, but about 6 months of procurement. And we started the procurement earlier this year. We're waiting for government permits. Each of these plants requires an export permit from certain countries, import permit from South Africa, and then a fairly lengthy supply chain. So, we're currently in that process right now.
This person says hello from Edmonton, Canada, and he asks, I was wondering if you could give some insights or analytics on the current profit projections for the isotope-related product lines over the next fiscal year, and how would they compare to previous years?
Well, greetings to Edmonton, Canada. Great place. I've been there many times. So we haven't really given guidance as to what our revenues will look like this year versus last year, other than that we're expecting significant growth this year over last year. And if you look at our filings and our press releases, we kind of give you an idea of what each plant can produce at maximum capacity. And that should allow you to think about what an annual run rate would be as we exit this year. And then depending on when each month each plant kicks in, what we'll do in terms of revenues this year.
How confident are you about selling all ytterbium-176 you can produce? Why are there no negotiations with customers as per the 10K?
So I'm very confident we'll sell all the ytterbium-176 we can produce. We likely have about 2 kilos of demand for a plant that we think can do about 1 kilo of supply. Customers are screaming out for it. And when you say, why aren't we negotiating with customers? Yeah, we are kind of in negotiations with customers. We've agreed on prices and what contracts may look like with lots of customers. We just haven't signed any definitive agreements yet. The process for ytterbium is you have to supply samples first. They need to test their samples out in their nuclear reactor. When they hit their ytterbium-176 with a neutron, what else is produced as well as lutetium-177? And so that's the next stage in the contracting. But I'm highly confident we'll sell, all the ytterbium that we can produce.
Which public companies in the United States are your biggest isotopes competitors, or are the competitors Russian companies that might no longer be exporting isotopes to the West?
So our main competitor is Rosatom, which is the Russian government. They are exporting isotopes to the United States. There's never been an embargo or trade restrictions on isotopes during the recent political kind of uncertainty. The world relies on these isotopes. World couldn't operate without them in many days, many things we do normally. So there's been no embargoes. In terms of other isotopes, there's some very small producers of gram quantities of ytterbium, mainly academic institutions, I understand. The DOE produce a few isotopes as well. But largely speaking, the isotopes, and then Urenco as well in the UK have a stable isotopes division. They produce some zinc-68. So there are other producers out there. It's a competitive market like any market is, and we have to be price competitive versus those other competitors.
Final question for you, Paul. How much does each kilo of your top 5 isotopes sell for in US dollars?
So that depends very much on the isotope. So, for example, silicon-28, one of the contracts we signed for silicon-28, a kilo of silane is $500,000 US. For ytterbium-176, a kilogram would be about $20 million US. And for carbon-14, it'd be $24 million US. And then we haven't really signed any other contracts with other isotopes. I can't really talk about pricing there yet, but they're high priced and high margin.
Paul, thank you very much, and thank you to all the persons who have submitted questions. For more information on ASP Isotopes, reach us at 1-800-REDSHIP or email us at aspi@redship.com. And we invite anyone who didn't get his question answered to just paste it into an email and send it to us, and I'll make sure that Paul sees it. Please visit the information page created by RedShip for ASP Isotopes, ASPIinfo.com. There, you can view and download the investor presentation and fact sheet and sign up for news alerts on ASP Isotopes. And you can also use our new AI assistant on ASPIinfo.com to ask questions about ASP Isotopes. The assistant will, in real time, deliver up those answers to you. It's a new thing that we're doing here at RedShip. We're very excited about it. Please watch Small Stocks, Big Money, RedShip's program featuring exciting small cap companies, every Saturday night at 7 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg USA. Join RedShip's next webinar with Nova Minerals tomorrow at 4:15 p.m. U.S. Eastern. Register for all RedShip webinars at redship.com/events, where you can also view an archived version of today's ASP Isotopes webinar. Thank you again to our many participants today, and thank you as always, Paul.
Thank you for your interest. Have a good evening.